Yes, there have been live demonstrations. Yeah, but not cracking walnuts and opening bottles.
Handling physical impacts, of course they beat it
Yeah,
up.
yeah, yeah, exactly. Of course they beat it up.
Of course they beat it up.
I don't know why. I really hated that they do
It's
that.
like
I
the
wish they
Boston
just wouldn't.
Dynamics when they're like pushing it over with the hockey stick to see if it can actually stand up.
Exactly.
It's always so mean. I always feel bad for them.
I always feel bad for them, and I think we should feel bad for them. Actually, this is a really good point to discuss. We should probably add that. Let's just dive into that one right now.
Yeah, let's go.
Why are people doing this? Now, I know that people might argue, yeah, but it's not a real human being or it's not an animal, but that's not the point. I think that of course there's a level of anthropomorphization going on. When I feel uncomfortable when I see a robot being kicked or pushed, I feel uncomfortable because it looks like a being. And then other people might argue, but it's not a being. But I think that it's important that even if it isn't a being, you just shouldn't show any unwarranted aggression.
Yeah.
Because it's not about the thing, it's about you. It's about you choosing apparently for you, aggression is not a matter of like all aggression is wrong unless it is in self-defense. It is a mindset. Apparently people think if it's not a human, then it's okay to be aggressive. And that is a slippery slope. Because first it's okay, it's not a living being, so aggression is okay. And then it's an animal, so aggression is okay. And that's where it leads. It's about having a kind of moral understanding, a feeling, okay, undue aggression in any form or any shape, in any situation is wrong. And all humans should have that, in my opinion. Because
but I think it's different because I think the way people are more okay with that, I think it's because people, when they see, for example, those dog robots from Boston Dynamics or the ones like that put boxes back and forth at Amazon facilities, they're like, oh, this is just the same chunk of metal as the toaster that I have back at home, so that's okay. But eventually, as AI gets better and better, people say that eventually it can achieve sentience, right? And it can actually be, in lack of a better term, alive. It can feel, it can think for itself. Then people are already have that predisposition to, oh, it's a robot, so it's okay to do this because it's not an actual person. But the moment it starts like evolving and it actually becomes like a person, then people are already okay with the idea of, hey, it's just a robot, so it's okay. It's not. It doesn't have pain receptors, so it's okay.
I think that's another really great argument. Ultimately, personally, I would argue that it's about looking at yourself and your own behavior, and that is separate from whether or not the object of your anger or aggression or behavior is or is not human or alive or whatever. Yeah. Because I think that morals should come from within and not from without. Yeah. This is the same argument that I, for example, would argue that you do not require a god to be a good person.
Yes.
I don't believe that you should require an all-knowing, omnipotent God that is going to punish you if you do something wrong. It should come from within yourself. This is the same conversation that's going on right now, because there's these videos, or there was this legal case where these guys, immigrants, unfortunately, robbed a Dutch guy from his Rolex in the train. And when their family found out, they were ashamed. And they felt remorse because their family found out and their honor was hurt. But they did not feel shame or remorse for the fact that they did it. And now there's this discussion online. Of course, right-wingers love this as well, saying like these people don't share our culture, blah, blah, blah. I'm not going to go into that. But I do feel that in the essence of the argument, they are right. You should care about doing the right thing because it is the right thing.
Yes.
Having said that, I also believe you are absolutely right that it is also a matter of building habits. If we build the habit of treating machines as inferior beings or creatures that we can just abuse at our leisure, then we will take that kind of behavior into the future, where these beings will indeed become far more the equivalent of ourselves. And we'll have the same problem all over again as we had, 200, 300 years ago when we had slavery, because people had decided that black people were not equally valuable as white people. So we're just going to go and do the same stupid shit all over again. So
instead of just being other humans, it's just robots, it's just machines, it's just a matter of just
exactly.
Eventually, right now you could consider that it's okay because they don't have the feelings, but still, even still, it's like for posterity. Because then
Yeah,
it's, for example, I think that nowadays people use like all of these terms that are real used to describe really bad things, but since people throw them around casually,
easily.
they lose
Yeah,
their meaning. I think it's the same thing.
they
Right
lose their
now,
meaning and
it's
their value.
okay.
Yeah.
They can do it. They can feel justified. Machines don't feel. It's exactly the same. It's not complaining. It just does what I tell it. It just does what I tell it to. But eventually, it's not going to be like that in the future.
No,
It may or
no,
may not
very,
be like
very
that.
good point. I guess we started today's newsletter, so let's just play
Right?
the intro tune,
Right.
and then we'll just carry on from here.
Yeah.
Okay, let's go. Where's this song? This is it. Why is it not playing? Oh, here.
Welcome to another episode of the Innovation Network newsletter with your hosts Patrick and Aragon, philosophers and analysts.
Okay, so this week we do not have Patrick, unfortunately, or fortunately, maybe, because I have the absolute pleasure of doing this week's newsletter with Ricardo, who's been with us for a while, of course, but mostly in the background, being our producer, editor-in-chief, and doing all the stuff that Patrick and me don't want to do. But yeah, so here we are. So we already opened it up. We had a great conversation about the morality of how we treat our growing army. I was going to say, but that has connotations of robotic counterparts. And we were looking at the Unitree G1 because something, and we'll go into we went into this, but I'll go into this very shortly. So the Unitree 1 is one of the humanoid robots. The Unitree G1, I should say, is one of the humanoid robots developed in China that's being rolled out and is already available in retail. You can go online and you can buy one right now. And the thing that we didn't really cover the last time we discussed this robot, because I'm pretty sure Patrick and me covered it like 2 months ago when it was first announced. It was not for sale yet, but it's only $16,000. And so the question that I asked Ricardo when I came on this morning for this recording is, can it do my washing? Can it do my laundry? Can it cook for me? And although it can't do all of that yet, it seems that there's already several examples of things that it can do, like opening bottles, hammering nails with some degree of accuracy. And even if these robots are not like full-on companions in the household, I think that this is a clear sign, right? This year, it's a robot that seems like more or less still a gadget, but at 16,000, right? That's the price of an electric motorcycle, a city bike, a small car. Actually, you can't even buy a small car for that. It's cheaper than a
It's an
small car.
appliance at this point. With
It's
that
an
price,
appliance at
it's
this point.
considered an appliance.
Exactly. And I think that's the important thing to realize, is that this is really going really fast. Ultimately, this just means, especially with the production capabilities of China, which is now apparently already in this game, Elon Musk announced that his robot, the Tesla one, will launch next year at $30,000. That's twice the price of this one, right? So that means that the premium versions will be as expensive as a small car. They will probably have great features and capabilities. They're already cheaper than having an employee in your factory. But even for normal people, it will be, well, normal people, at least for the middle class in the West, it will be very affordable to buy a robot. And I think that this will lead to some kind of, maybe down the road, 5 years, 10 years from now, when we start transitioning to UBI, because robots and AI basically remove 30 to 40% of the jobs from the job market. Maybe what will happen is that everybody will own a robot. And maybe if you don't have a robot, you can get one from the government. And maybe you'll have one doing your household, but maybe you'll also have one that literally just goes to work for you, that represents you in the workforce. That could also be a way of this working out. And maybe then, because it would be too complicated to have your own robot that you actually send to work, maybe what we'll see is that you basically get some kind of government bond giving you like shares in the robot workforce, and that these get handed out and that they can be traded, but that you have to maintain some minimum of these to provide yourself with a basic universal basic income. But that some kind of economy will arise around that will provide people with the very basics, and therefore maintain economic development and a GDP that is tied to individuals, yet no longer requires the actual human being to be the one to do the work. And I'm just philosophizing here, but that's what we do on this.
That sounds like a great idea. That sounds really great. I think it's what I like to call a positive cost. You integrate AI and people still come out on top because like now you have more time because the robot will go to work for you. It will do all of these things that you don't want to do, like chores and everything like that. And you still get paid to provide for yourself and or your family. So it's a pretty win situation.
Yeah.
And who knows, it might even help the economy as a whole, maybe, because people have to commute a little less. They don't have to do as much. They can spend more on what they want.
Yeah,
perhaps.
In fact, there's even more to that, I would argue, because I don't know if you saw what I posted on LinkedIn yesterday, Ricardo, and obviously, I'm still on LinkedIn. I'm afraid they're going to ban me again because I've been posting about obesity. But yeah. But so let's go here for a quick moment. So this is a TED Talk by Rutger Bregman, my fellow Dutchman.
Why do the poor make so many poor decisions? The poor borrow more, save less, smoke more, exercise less, drink more, and eat less healthfully. The underlying assumption is the same. There's something wrong with them. And to be honest, this was what I thought for a long time. It was only a few years ago that I discovered that everything I thought I knew about poverty was wrong.
Now, I'm not going to play the whole video, but ultimately what he explains after this is that there has been shown to be a clear correlation and actually a causation between being poor and making poor decisions. Actually, factually, what they found is that people drop about 14 IQ points if they are poor. At the very least, because once they perceive money as being scarce, their decision-making process changes. And for some stupid reason, which I don't know yet because I haven't seen the whole talk and haven't read the book, but they start making stupid decisions. Instead of making smarter decisions, they make worse decisions. And the interesting thing that I thought I had, and I posted about this yesterday, which is in this post that you can see here, is that we might actually see something completely counterintuitive happen over the next decade and a half. Although people will resist, because when they start losing jobs, they will perceive it as a threat, right? They will think that ultimately it's going to be bad for them because they will want to hold on to what they're used to. However, what we might see is that ultimately it will be to their it will benefit them in ways that I didn't foresee first, because I always thought that we would ultimately get to universal basic income, and I always thought that would be good for everybody if everybody has an income. But what I never realized is that, and I realized that after this, is that if we get universal basic income and we are capable of raising everybody above the poverty line, and we remove the necessity we've removed the economic stress from people's lives, where they are continuously worried about being able to afford their living, then that will, if this is right, and I believe this research, it will mean that everybody will start making better decisions. Everybody will start living better lives, healthier lives. That means that ultimately, if this happens, our cost for healthcare will go down. Our cost for social welfare will go down. Our cost for dealing with crime and the results of crime and criminals will go down. People will no longer live in poverty. That means that whole neighborhoods that now have to deal with all kinds of problems resulting from that will go away. That means that life for everybody will be lifted to a higher level, and the cost for it will actually go down.
Yeah,
it's really quite incredible. So yeah, I just wanted to
maybe that correlation I'm just extrapolating here, but maybe it's because of like mental health, because people who are poor, they get like their life obviously gets worse, they get more problems, especially if they take out bigger loans that they can't pay off. So maybe they just enter that state of screw it, and maybe they turn to tobacco and alcohol and all of those unhealthy decisions because it doesn't matter to them anymore, because some people really can't bounce back. Meanwhile, the people who are better off, or at least stable, they actually have probably people under their wing that they have to take care of, and that gives them that extra motivation to be healthier and do better decisions that eventually are equivalent to living longer. So they want to be around longer to have that, but that's just me.
Yeah, no, but I'm pretty sure that a lot of this, depending on who you are and what your circumstances are, will play into that. Absolutely. The interesting thing is that I also think that so we've seen over the last 4 decades, we've seen actually 4 decades. I should be saying the last 7 decades since the Second World War, and specifically since Bretton Woods, we've seen a massive rise in debt around the world, right? Mm-hmm. Debt has completely soared out of control. And it's not just corporate debt, it's also private debt, specifically private debt in the last 3 decades. This would also mean that private debt might most probably go down as well, because private debt in very many circumstances is a result of poor decision making. And it is mostly the poor that have they might not have the most debt, but they have the most unmanaged debt. That just leads to more debt and more problems.
Yeah, that spiral.
Yeah. And although I would argue that we need to get rid of all debt and to some extent of the whole idea of debt, at least in the way that we're using it right now, both corporate, because why have corporations become worth more? Because we haven't seen an actual real growth of the economy in 2 decades. It's because they're buying their own shares with money they borrow. So the way debt is being used right now is a massive problem for our economy and our future. But anyway, let's not get too deep in that. I think we've covered this topic. I think that there's reason to be optimistic about losing our jobs.
Yeah. As bad as that sounds, there's some good in there.
Yeah. But Ricardo, you're in charge today. What other topics do we have on the agenda? Oh, is it in the newsletter document? Am I being a nugget again?
Yes, it's in there.
Okay,
the first one is the topic that's been in everyone's mouth, which is the CrowdStrike failure.
Oh,
they pushed out a corrupted update that screwed over airports and all of that crucial infrastructure.
Yeah.
Which actually made me think, the pressure that there is now to make these flawless technology because it can't fail. Imagine if this was I don't think it affected household devices as much as it did infrastructure devices. But imagine if this was worldwide scale, every single device just gone because of one corrupt update.
Luckily, so on the one hand, yes, I absolutely share your worry and your observation. On the other hand, we can't really have a worldwide problem as long as we have a diverse system.
Mm-hmm.
And this just brings me back to the problem with increasing monopolies. I've opted out of Apple. That's not entirely, actually, maybe that is a little bit of a lie now. I have to I'll be honest, because I still own my iPhone. And in fact, I'm going to get a MacBook pretty soon as well, on top of my Windows systems, which I will continue to use. But I've definitely opted out of being an Apple-only guy or going into the Apple ecosystem completely without any other options. And I think that is the danger. And especially Apple likes to present itself okay, we're the shepherds of privacy, and we got the system that never fails. And now I saw they had a great marketing ad. Let's see if I can find it. Apple marketing ad. No error since 1984 or something it was. Yeah, I can't find it so quickly. Yesterday I saw a great ad by Apple. I was in bed, otherwise I would have saved it. That says, okay, it's a blue screen of death, like a Windows blue screen of death, but it says providing errorless computing since 1984, something like that. And I think it's such a massive show of arrogance, because just because they believe that it cannot happen to them doesn't mean it cannot happen to them. And in fact, if it would happen to them, the problems for Apple users would be significantly bigger than they would be for Microsoft users, because nobody would have any control over it. Literally no control. At least on these Windows machines, people could fix it themselves. They could find workarounds. There was ways for them to quickly fix it even without an official a channel rolling out the solution. But on an Apple infrastructure, that would not be possible. But I think ultimately what it comes down to is ecosystem diversity.
Yeah.
Right. We were talking a lot about diversity and inclusion, of course, in the last few years in the sense of the workspace, etc. But I think it's really important that we realize that it's just as important for technology.
Mhm.
And so on the one hand, yes, the existential risk of technology going, is that the right way to
Awry, I
explain?
think that's
Awry.
Yeah,
That's
it's a weird
Thank
word.
you.
It's a weird word.
The risks and the potential existential risk of technology going awry is higher than ever before.
Mhm.
And as a result of the continuous kind of monopolization or attempted monopolizations by tech companies, that creates dangers aside from the benefits as never before. But if we just make sure that we keep our infrastructure diverse to some extent, then it will have some natural kind of immunity.
Yeah.
On top of that, cybersecurity will actually become more important than ever before. Not just cybersecurity, but also cyber reliability, I would almost say.
Yeah. So if you use too much, or if you rely too much on one focused, for example, company to take care of cybersecurity, then it becomes more of a crutch, because if it fails, then you have no backup, you have no safety net.
Yeah.
And
like
it
with
creates a lot more
CrowdStrike.
problems.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
And it creates a lot of problems.
It has to be said, though, it is absolutely unbelievable that CrowdStrike would release an update like this. And I've read it in many of the articles that they would release an update like this without any proper
Quality
diligence,
control.
Apparently, they did no proper testing. Otherwise, this would have never been rolled out. It's just absolutely mind-blowing. However, the next thing that I came to mind for me is, okay, now imagine that you had artificial intelligence that did the quality testing for you.
Yeah.
So rather than like, I foresee a future, and of course I'm putting on my little future historian sci-fi hat here, but I can see a future where we're running a virtualized metaverse environment, something like Omniverse, but maybe even for more advanced, where AIs at 1 million times the speed of the normal world are actually running simulations with new software updates, where in this kind of virtual environment, they're testing it on literally every possible Windows machine that you can conceive in terms of hardware and software, and it's all being simulated, and we see what happens, right? That it might not be 2 years or 5 years down the road, but it might be something that I could envision 10 years or 15 years down the road. That then brings a whole new level of potential security to the table. On the other hand, of course, that also works on the other side of what do you call it? Not benevolent, but what the opposite of benevolent?
Malevolent.
Malevolent. Thank you very much. Malevolent agents could also, of course, use this in the future.
Yeah.
That's also something to consider.
Yeah, because it's not just technology that grows, like hackers and bad actors will grow with it as well. Because it's, for example, like in games, the cheating situation, it's been a cat and mouse game for decades, where it's like, oh, we have a new anti-cheat. Then the new hacker comes by 3 months later. Oh, I have a new workaround your anti-cheat. Then it's all over again. I have a new one. Yeah, but I also have a new way to get around it.
Yeah. It is an endless cat and mouse game, and that's not going to change. But the risks are, to some extent, increasing, and the speed at which all of that is taking place is also increasing. I need to grab some extra coffee. I'll be right back.
Yeah, go ahead.
Cool. What else?
Next, we have the release of the GPT-4o Mini.
Oh.
And I wanted to ask you, because I couldn't really get it, since you're more knowledgeable than me with this. What is the difference between the 4o Mini and the regular 4o?
Size. Size. Excuse me. Size. Which is implied with the name Mini.
With the Mini, yeah.
So I guess I'd still have to explain. Oh my God. I make coffee with MCT oil and cayenne pepper. And when I swallow it wrong and the cayenne pepper goes into my throat.
Oh my God.
So, yeah, and the cayenne pepper is very good for your heart, especially in the morning. But yeah, sometimes that happens.
Yeah.
Cool. So GPT-4o Mini. Now, I'm not entirely sure about the actual size difference because I haven't dove into that yet, but we can do that live. So let's just do that here. This is not something that will come back in the recording, but if people watch the video, they can see this once we've got that cut.
Yeah.
Main differences between GPT 4.0 and GPT 4.0 mini. So size is the big thing, and size is important. I can go into that while we're watching this. Size is important because it's about how you can deploy it. If a model is much smaller, then you can run it on a less powerful machine. That's literally how simple it is. And it is much cheaper to run because it requires less compute to get to its answers. That's also what you see here. So if he says GPT-4o is priced at $4 per million input tokens and $15 per million output tokens. GPT-4 mini is significantly cheaper at 15 cents per million input tokens and 60 cents per million output tokens. So here's already a massive result of this. Having a smaller model results in much cheaper operating costs. And of course, this is a big argument right now because the argument is mostly about the energy consumption of these models. But this is actually, interestingly, another thing. A smaller model has a much lower energy consumption. So if you're doing things where it is perfectly feasible to replace the GPT-4o model by the GPT-4o mini model, then not only are you saving money, you're also saving energy. And in fact, people are who complain about AI energy usage, to some extent, I think that is a very temporary problem. Because yes, initially our compute will go up because we keep building bigger models and we keep training them and we need more compute and energy for that. But ultimately, the necessary energy to train and operate these models has already gone down by more than 96% over the last 12 to 18 months, right? So you see how fast that actual use of energy, etc., goes down is incredible. That is it. I just made a ballpark figure there, what I read yesterday in The Singularity is Near from Ray Kurzweil, so don't pin me down exactly on those numbers. But what I can say is that the energy required to run models is going down at an exponential rate, extremely.
So they're getting optimized.
Yeah, they're getting optimized. So in this time, apparently context window is a difference. So GPT-4o supports up to 8,000 tokens, 8,200 tokens almost, it says here. And GPT-4o mini has a larger context window of 128,000 tokens. I feel that this might be wrong, but I might be wrong. Is that correct? What is the context window of Reddit? It doesn't say anything here. Can you? Oh, you can't see. You can, because I switched to a different window. You can't see what I'm doing.
I'm actually seeing it from the actual OpenAI, and they say like the benchmarks that they have. It's better than other small models at reasoning tasks involving both text and vision.
Yeah, but okay. But those are like the things that go up with every model, right? So those are basically things that always go up. It doesn't specifically relate to the difference between the mini models. So for example, right now there's clearly an established trend where you have bigger models, which are usually the best, strongest performers, and then there's smaller models that are much cheaper to operate, that operate across the board, usually at a little lower level, like they do everything a little less well, but they're much cheaper and much faster and much easier to run. So getting back to GPT-4o, for example, you can actually, from what I understand, you can run it on a machine like my own, like my desktop. I'm running a 4070 Ti, which is apparently just a little too weak, but if I were running a 4090, I could run a model locally. So I could just run GPT-4o mini on my own PC, and I could run a local model, which means that I would be 100% sure that whatever I ask it to do, it doesn't share any of my information. So for something like that, it would be extremely useful. And of course, you can imagine that as we continue to build these smaller models with these high performance capabilities, right now, you cannot run GPT-4o on your phone without internet, right? Because you need cloud compute to actually use it. Whenever you do a query, it goes to some massive supercomputer. It's not entirely supercomputer, but it's some cloud rack, right? That has vastly more compute than my phone. It finds the answer and then sends it back to me. And that's fine, but it costs a lot of energy, which is not good for the environment. But it also means that without an internet connection, I'm lost. Now, if you could, for example, run a smaller model on your phone, right, that has nearly the same capabilities, then you could even build it so that it, based on your query, it can decide which model will be best suffice to answer your question. And then it can either pick the local model, in which case it will be much faster, much less latency, much less energy required. And you don't need to use the internet, right? So much less energy usage. Or it can use an internet model. And I think that's the hybrid situation that we're heading towards. So this is why a smaller model has all these benefits.
Okay. Yeah, so now you could, for example, in the future, have multiple models running at the same time, and then your machine can decide which one is better for that specific task that you give it.
That's definitely where we're going. That's definitely where we're going. And it's interesting, of course, because I've said always that Apple doesn't have any AI. And when Apple released Apple Intelligence, it was really ridiculous because they basically didn't really show any real AI, because 90% of what they showed as Apple Intelligence is them running local models. And the reason that their capabilities were so limited is because they're all at the level of GPT 3.5, which me saying that those capabilities are limited is funny if you think about it, because that's how fast we've gotten used to this kind of level of performance. But that's because those were the only models that you can run locally with that kind of performance. So now ChatGPT or OpenAI launches GPT-4o Mini, which means that they're actually launching a model that's significantly better than GPT 3.5, but that runs at the same kind of cost and almost same kind of level of compute necessary, which means that in a very short period from now, we'll be able to run these models on our smartphones locally with almost the same kind of performance. So that then begs the question, will Apple be able to then implement these new models? And does their partnership with OpenAI allow them to include this inside of Apple? And if that is the case, will they even do that? Because that would mean that they're taking third-party software, technically, and they would integrate that into the Apple ecosystem. And I'm not entirely sure that they would be willing to do that, because they've been so guarded about doing. They've always been against that, as far as I know. That's another interesting question that rises from this. But it definitely means that Microsoft is going to do that, because their partnership does incorporate this kind of thing. So that means that very soon on Android phones through Microsoft software, we should expect to start seeing a significant uptake in the capabilities of models that can be run locally. Yeah.
Okay. Great. Now,
cool. What else?
This next one is actually wrapping back into what we talked in the beginning, which is like this takeover that AI is going to have on people's jobs and on people's lives. And I found this article that's just saying protecting workers' rights throughout the AI revolution. And they brought up a point that I actually found a bit fair, which is human-centric approach to AI. And people have this concern that people with less, how do I say this? People who are less digitally apt, who don't understand technology so much, may be getting like left behind. And how do we deal like with these people who are like falling behind? Because we can't just leave them. How would we, for example, make them understand and teach them these necessary skills, which mostly are more common within the older generations? So,
I think this is an imagined problem. I think this is a problem that will not really exist ultimately, and I'll explain why, and I'll do that showing my favorite unused gadget in this house. Maybe people, when they see this video, they will remember this one. I don't know. You know what it is?
I don't.
This is a Rabbit R1, and I haven't used it once yet. And it was launched in January, and it was all the hype because this was going to be the real first artificial intelligence gadget. And it has a camera here. It's not open now. I haven't used it. I really haven't used it yet because I've just been afraid of how disappointed I would be. But it has a camera, and you can point it at stuff, and you can ask it questions. And the thing is that when this came out, I was super excited right? Because I thought that this would be the first real artificial intelligence assistant I could give to my mother, which is why I initially ordered 2. And my mother could use it, and she could say, okay, Rabbit, my phone is asking me to fill in my DigiD, which is your Dutch digital ID for the government, and she never understands how that works. It still doesn't, like, she's 78. I've tried to explain to her a million times what your DigiD is and how it works, and that it sits on your phone, that it lives on your phone, that when you open an app that asks for DigiD, you just have to press OK, and then it opens the DigiD app and it will verify. She doesn't get it. It just like the whole concept is so abstract for her. She always thinks that she needs some kind of code or a password for me, and she just doesn't get it. So I was super excited when the Rabbit R1 came out, because I thought that this Rabbit R1 would be capable of telling my mother exactly what steps to go through to use her DigiD. Is there somebody drilling in the background with you?
Oh, there is. They're doing construction outside. Oh no. Maybe I can.
We can turn on noise canceling for you somewhere. Echo cancellation. Oh, no. This can be changed while recording. We should have turned this on before. Let's not forget to do that next time.
Yeah. Maybe I'll turn myself down.
Yeah, so noise reduction is turned on, though. Maybe it will be filtered out, ultimately. Yeah, so anyway, so I thought that this would be super useful because it would help my mother to move beyond her digital exclusion, because that's what we're talking about, right? If you're not very digitally apt, then you might get digitally excluded. And although the Rabbit R1 didn't deliver on the promises, I am still convinced that because of AI's increasingly multimodal capabilities and its increasing ability of contextual understanding and awareness, we are very rapidly moving towards a scenario where AI will basically bridge that gap. Because let's say that you are digitally excluded, right? And you get a Meta AI glasses. And for the record, this is something we might cover right now. Google is actually now competing with Meta for a deal with EssilorLuxottica. Is it EssilorLuxottica? It's Essilor. Yeah, EssilorLuxottica. So EssilorLuxottica is the biggest sunglasses brand in the world, right? And we know that Meta released the Ray-Ban glasses because Meta is actually in the process of spending over $4 billion to buy a minority share in EssilorLuxottica as a part of their partnership with EssilorLuxottica for the future of smart glasses. Right, so that means that what Meta is planning is to start rolling out smart glasses, not just Ray-Bans in 1 or 2 models, but ultimately 5-10 years down the road, Meta wants it to be possible for you to buy any kind of sunglasses from EssilorLuxottica and have them in a smart glasses version, where they will have cameras and they will be able to talk to you with an AI assistant, or at least maybe not every model, but a lot of models. And Google wants in on this. Google also wants this. So they're also talking to EssilorLuxottica. And they're even they're also trying to beat each other out. But ultimately, I think EssilorLuxottica will come to some point where they'll probably make a deal with both. And we need that because we don't want a monopoly, right? Because we want diversity. But so what that means is that within the next decade, we will 100% sure transition to the inclusion of smart glasses. We've seen the rise of smart watches, right? This is not a smart watch, by the way. We've seen the rise of smart watches. We're now seeing the rise of smart rings, right? Samsung, which is something that I also put in the chat for today. Samsung has very successfully launched its first smart health tracker ring, right? And it's an incredible device, although apparently it doesn't do well with magnets. And Samsung announced that. And it's funny because I wondered why nobody pointed out that MagSafe, which was introduced by Apple, but you can now use it on almost any phone. I have a MagSafe on my Samsung for wireless charging. This is a magnet, right? Yeah. So if I would have a Samsung ring, and this is how I hold my phone, I would always have my ring in front of my magnet, which would always mess up my sensors. So that's a problem right there. But anyway, the point is we're seeing the rise of smart rings now. We're going to see 100% certain the rise of smart glasses as well. 10 years down the line, anybody that can afford it, and as the cost will go down significantly very rapidly for all of these devices, that means that anybody will be able to get at least some level of these devices, well, whether it be the premium ones or the cheapest ones. Everybody will have some of it. Everybody will be walking around with a smart ring, smart glasses, and a phone, and possibly smartwatch. I think the smartwatch will, of all of these, be the one that ultimately will be the most optional, right?
And probably the most familiar for people to use, because glasses and watches are things that everyone uses. So if you implement smart capabilities on them, you're already halfway there, because people are already used to using glasses and watches and their phones. So if the phone gets migrated into glasses and watch, not only is it more practical, but people are already used to it.
That's one option. But what you're already seeing, for example, in the reviewers of the Ring, is that they say, I don't want to be wearing my bulky smartwatch all the time, but I still want to be able to record my health metrics. And now I have the Ring, so I don't need to wear the watch. And if the Ring will also include, for example, payment, which of course is going to be the next step, that you just swipe your smart Ring past the payment, and you get a notification on your phone, which you can feel in your pocket, so you don't even need to look at it, right? Then many of the use cases that right now are the main use cases for the smartwatch are going to disappear. Right, most people that I know that have an Apple Watch, for example, the thing they love the most about it is that they can use it for payment, so they don't need to take their phone out anymore, even, right? And everything else is they just look at notifications. But then there's a lot of people now that want to opt out of notifications all the time. They don't want to have to look at notifications. They don't want to be interrupted. So it'll depend, but you'll have any kind of mix that you feel comfortable with, right? The thing is that the smartwatches will become essential. And the reason for that is because the smartwatches will function as the eyes and ears of your set, right? If you have a ring and you have a watch, that's nice. But once you have the glasses, your AI assistant, which lives probably on your phone, partially in your glasses, depending on what it's doing, because these will all be edge devices connected, the glasses will serve as the eyes. The glasses will allow the AI to see what you're seeing. So it will allow the AI to understand the context of whatever it is that you're asking about. So this will become increasingly important, but that also means that for everybody using this, that will bridge that gap of digital exclusion, because you don't need to understand anything digital anymore, because if you don't, you will always have an assistant that can talk to you in your language, on a level that you understand, that can explain to you whatever it is that you need to understand about the situation that you're in, digitally or physically.
Yeah, so people will just inherently just adopt these because they are so familiar. Yeah, I
That's
can see
what I
that.
believe.
And you could have, I actually didn't think about that you said about having the model itself being housed on the phone, or the most powerful piece that you have on you. And then it can even separate or delegate tasks, some things for your watch, some things for your glasses. And I actually imagined, for example, because my grandparents came to visit and they got lost in Schiphol. They got lost. They couldn't make it out of the terminal. So I imagine, for example, if that happens, because their problem was we saw the signs, but we can't read them because they're neither Dutch or English, and we don't know any of these languages. They only speak Portuguese. So I was like, how good would it be if they had, because they both wear glasses to see.
Exactly.
If they had one of those assistants, they just have to ask in Portuguese, okay, where do I need to go? And the glasses will be able to see that, where are they? An airport.
It'll go beyond that.
It'll go beyond that. Schiphol. And then it tells them the way and everything they need to know.
It'll go beyond that, Ricardo. They won't even need to ask. Your grandparents will land at Schiphol Airport. They will have the tickets for their flights in their email. The AI will know that it has the tickets because they downloaded the PDF for scanning at the airport. The PDF is on the phone. The AI will know what's on the phone, right? Because that's NVIDIA's Chat RTX, right? Is already doing that. Chat RTX is an AI that knows all the files that you share with it. And then it can act based on the contextual understanding of all of those files and what's in them. So 10 years from now, your grandparents would land at Schiphol Airport. And as they walk to the gate, they will be like, okay, where do we exit, for example, the baggage area? And if they move right, the AI will say, actually, if you want to exit this area right now, you have to go to your left, right? But if you need to go to the toilet, you might have to go on the right. And of course, there will be some fine tuning for everybody that when will the AI jump in or not. but it will be like having an assistant walking next to you that is trying to understand your needs. And if it says you they reserved a rental car, or they have a robo taxi coming pick them up, then the AI will say, okay, you've walked out of the gate now. If you want to go to the robo taxi that's ready to pick you up, you'd have to take a left right now and then go right. And they don't even need to look at the signs. They don't even need to be able to read them. The signs won't even be translated. The AI will simply interpret the situation, all the data that's there, and give them the instructions that they need based on understanding their need before they even know that they have that need. And this is where we're going.
Yeah, that would be really cool. And even for, I think, was it Google, the ones that had the glasses that could translate, it could give you like real-time subtitles if someone was speaking another language into your preferred language.
Yeah, Google ran a prototype with that 2-3 years ago, but right now there's multiple glasses available that can do that. This new Snap glasses can do that. I'm pretty sure that there is a, what's it called? I think it used to be called Nreal, but now it's called, they changed names. It's a Chinese brand. Chinese smart glasses used to be called Nreal. Let's see what Perplexity tells us. I think they rebranded now. It's called X-Real now. So yeah, so X-Real glasses can do some of that. I'm pretty sure. There's going to be multiple options of that. Literally yesterday, I saw on LinkedIn, actually, I can show that. It's cool. It reminded me of this. I always save. So yesterday, here we go. See, so this is a new... The future of mixed reality. These are 8K MR headset, mixed reality. So this is a new pair of glasses that's just been released by a Chinese company. Where's the name? Maybe, what's the company called? Oh, BOE. Okay. I don't know what that stands for. I didn't know this company before, but developed with BOE. Okay. I haven't dove into this, but I saw it yesterday. So this is already, see what is happening here? So he has an edge device around his neck, where a lot of the compute is being done to make it easier to wear. I think it's a pretty smart solution. I don't know if that's going to be for everyone, but it just goes to show that there's a lot of development in this field going on, creating more extensive augmented reality options. But I think first we'll see the rise of smart glasses like the Meta glasses. Google will come with its own version of that. And I think that an important thing about them is that they're going to be fashionable because they're going to be working with EssilorLuxottica. And this will integrate with your smart ring, with your smartphone, and ultimately with your phone as an edge compute device. And this is another interesting thing, right? Because once you have a smartwatch with a processor, and you have your phone with a processor, and you have your glasses maybe also with a processor, then you can use all these different processors to do different things, and they can probably make it so that they can work together in a really smart way, and different models can run on each of them for different kind of things, right? So that's another thing to consider, that ultimately a lot of the increase in computational ability over the last decade has not come from an increase just in hardware, but has also come from an increase in how we were able to use that hardware. The human brain is millions of times slower than the average computer processor right now, right? But the human brain is capable of parallel processing to an extent that we have not been able to recreate with computers yet. And so there's still a lot of improvement that we can make in our ability to process information that doesn't even necessarily require just the increase in hardware compute, even though that's still going on, right? So
yeah, because they also say, speaking of the going back, they say that we need to ensure that workers profit from each new breakthrough. And the biggest challenge is to establish a system where the gains made out of AI are distributed fairly. So this is going back to that talk we had with the robots and that new economy that they could bring. If the robot goes to work for you, but you still get paid a wage.
Yeah, exactly. Because I think that a lot of these, I think the problem, and this of course has been my shtick for a while now, the problem with a lot of these predictions and articles is their lack of vision. The people writing them simply are not capable of really understanding the size of the incredible shift in how our economies and our lives will function over the next decade. Because here they're writing 42% of Europeans still lack digital skills. And they're writing that because they think that this is going to be a massive problem for the foreseeable future. Whereas I would argue that if we take into account the speed, the record-breaking speed at which this technology is being developed and rolled out, and as we discussed, its ability to contextually understand, based on its multimodality functionalities, everything that's going on in our lives, and then help us with that, ultimately it won't matter if people have digital skills or not. That's not to say that people shouldn't develop digital skills. Of course, for our own well-being, for the development of our minds. And if we as a species do not want to turn into some kind of meat bags on a floating chair, we need to develop our skills on our brains. But it will not be a lack of skills that will disconnect or exclude people from what's going to happen over the next few years, or exclude them from being able to benefit from that. I just don't believe that. There are dystopic futures possible, but I believe that we have a very good chance that we will be forced into a future that will be beneficial to all.
Yeah, it can always be. It's how people, and I think we'll talk this on the last one because it goes into this. Which is AI is a neutral force. It isn't either good or evil. It's depending on who uses it. So of course it can be very beneficial if the people who are in charge of integrating AI into society have the best interests of humanity in mind, then it can go well. But it's also, we should also like keep an eye out for those people who have the power to integrate and they have less than great intentions. So that's like, of course, change comes with danger, of course, and especially with technology, you never know what might happen even tomorrow. Tomorrow there could be a new model coming out, you never know, for example. Or it might plateau again, like it did a decade back, like where AI just popped up and then it did nothing for a while, and now it's exploding exponentially. But we never know if it might plateau again. It might not. But by learning these skills and continuing to adapt, it doesn't matter to us anymore because we will grow with it no matter if it keeps going or not. So we'll always be safeguarded because if it does end up taking your job, then now you have a new skill and you can adapt to these new times. But if it doesn't, now a new skill and you're better for it.
Absolutely.
So you win. It's a win.
Yeah. No, absolutely true. I don't agree. I don't think that we'll see a plateauing of AI at this point. I think that we are now beyond plateauing in the sense that there are plateaus, don't get me wrong, but they're short. They're so short, in fact, that we don't even notice them. We've already had a plateau. Nobody noticed, right? Because basically as soon as GPT 3.5 and then GPT-4 came out, there was a plateau because they weren't sure how to move forward with transformer models. They knew that increasing the training data would increase capabilities, but they already saw diminishing returns. And in fact, we've seen a lot of papers come out and a lot of critics say there's diminishing returns on the growth of the capabilities of the models. We're exponentially increasing data, but the growth of the models' capabilities is not exponential. So we see diminishing returns. That, in effect, was a plateau, but it only lasted a few months because we found ways around that, right? We found things like a mixture of experts, right? Where we built basically, this is a simplification that's not entirely correct, but we combine different models that are good at different things as one model, and then we have a mixture of experts, for example, right? So there's all these different really smart things that smart people are doing that are already overcoming these plateaus very fast. And another thing, which is actually something that Ray Kurzweil mentions already in the Singularities Nearer, which I've started reading now, is that he says that we're already using AI to develop AI. And this is true, right? Although we have not allowed AI to tinker with itself and improve itself without oversight, it is 100% a fact that both at Google and OpenAI, they're using best AI models they have available, even the unrestricted ones, right? Without any guardrails to develop the next models.
Yeah.
And that is incredibly important because that means that not only do we have now human minds working on the problems, but we have AI minds working on the problems that are capable of things that no human mind could be. So the problem solving there is going to be really rapid.
Just working alongside it can bring a lot of enhancement to businesses and to everything. Everything will become just more efficient because you have AI doing the things in the background, doing the heavy lifting. Humans can just do like the more impactful decisions and like course correct if it as needed, and it's going to be much more efficient.
Yeah. Cool. What else?
Yeah, the last one I have here on my list is actually hits a bit close to home. It's AI is fueling uncertainty for game developers, which people are saying that jobs are changing, and the fact that they feel like their creativity is being choked out in the name of efficiency. So that's management and the top people at game dev studios are thinking of making games faster instead of making them better.
Yeah, I think that's a very interesting topic. I also think that ultimately it will not, again, people are going to make fun of this at some point, because I always say, yeah, it's not really an issue. It's just a perceived issue.
Yeah, because I think that is, now that you say perceived issue, it's actually something that I see that it's actually just, we shouldn't be, me talking as a creative, I don't think that we should be as worried as these people think we should be, because I don't think it can 100% replace you. You will still have a place and you will still have something to do, and it will stay around. It will, for example, traditional artists will stay around because exactly of that, because of perceived value. Because there will be people who look at art and they will see, no, I don't want AI generated art. I want my art made by a human. Or there are people who are on the other aspect who, no, I want my art to make AI because it's faster, because it's cheaper, and each will come with its pros and cons. And because of that need, the market will not let one of these things disappear, because you'll have people who want AI art and there's people who don't and they prefer traditional. So there's nothing to worry about, because there will still be people, for example, me, who I follow a lot of artists on Twitter and on other platforms, and I still have a preference for human made art, but that's me speaking as a creative, where I like to do things myself. I like to write my narratives myself, but I'm not saying that AI doesn't have a place in there, because I actually saw, I'm not sure if it was Procreate or another drawing software, where if when artists do the line art, an AI can actually correct their strokes if they miss it, which I think that's been an actual major pain that artists have when they have to draw the same line over and over and over again. But if you have an AI that can actually correct it as you go, you're still doing the art, you're still in charge of the creative and the direction. The AI is just assisting in polishing it as you go, and you don't have to go back and do it all over again, which would most of the time cost you an extra hour, an extra two, depending on the piece or on the process that you do.
Yeah. So this is interesting, because you're already painting a picture that there will be a wide spectrum. There will be a niche for people that just want a human-made art.
Yeah, I believe so.
Before people say there's racist or speciesist, look, we also appreciate Asian art as differently than we appreciate Western art, right? Yeah. So there's nothing wrong with this. This has been going on as long as humanity's been around. And that's not going to disappear. So you're exactly right. And this is exactly, I like to say, creatives are going to disappear. Artists are not. And creatives may disappear, but artists will thrive. Because ultimately now art will become more important instead of less important. And human-made art will become more important instead of less important. And coming back to this article, you said, I'm very aware, this is one of the quotes from the article, I'm very aware I could wake up tomorrow and my job could be gone, says Jez Highland. And the article, like you said, it goes on about how developers think that studios want to make more games instead of better games. Now, why is this also, in my opinion, a perceived issue, another real issue? Because at the same time, we're already seeing that AI allows one developer now to do the work, to some extent, of multiple developers, which means that in a very short amount of time, over the next few years, we'll see that anyone, even you, Ricardo, you could have your own game studio where you are literally the only human. And that means that you can operate at extremely low cost, right? Extremely low cost. You can operate the same capabilities that 10 years ago would require a full studio of developers, full-time jobs, everything that comes with that. But now you could do that all on your own. You could basically even do it on the weekend as a hobby. And you can still create a game that is of the top quality of a AAA game, right? Which means that it will become very easy for any developer to build their dream game and make that available. And then let's look what's happening at the gaming industry and what consumers feel about that, because it's also important. Because just because game studios decide that they're going to make more shitty games, right, rather than making better games, doesn't mean that these games are going to sell. In fact, we're seeing quite the opposite in the gaming industry. Because what have consumers said? Consumers have said when Helldivers came out, when Baldur's Gate came out, and now, for example, with The Final Descendant, there's a very clear message coming from consumers that's saying, we want better games. We don't want more shitty games with shitty microtransactions in games that aren't even fully functional on release, right? We want quality games, and we're willing to pay for those, which means that we are going into a future where any developer can have their own team assembled with AI. They can build any level quality of game they want, anything they want to realize for very low cost, and then release that into a market of consumers that are looking for quality rather than quantity. So that means that ultimately these developers are, as long as we're still living in the capitalist kind of world where they need a job and they need to make money, I think there's going to be an endless amount of opportunity for them, because the gaming industry is also still growing. They can do more with less money, which means that even if they build a game, they can release it for a much lower price, which means that gamers can afford to buy more games, which means that ultimately there's more space in the market for everybody. So I think these are perceived issues. I think they're not real issues. And ultimately down the line, most of these people are going to benefit rather than suffer from that.
Yeah, because it's usually, I think, because we've all seen, what was it called? It was a Marvel show on Netflix. I think it was Secret Invasion, where the opening screen was AI generated and it didn't look so good. And people are
back,
yeah. And also, I think this article mentions it, the finals and Foam Stars. Yes. The finals, which used AI generated voice lines, and Foam Stars used some splash art in AI, and people didn't like that too much. Because I think I think it's going to be integrated differently, because let's take, for example, science, where like AI could really push efficiency as fast as it can. Because, for example, with COVID, we got a vaccine in a couple months? If not a couple weeks, excluding testing. Imagine with an AI, a new disease comes, by the next day you have a vaccine for it.
Yep.
So fast and faster. But with gaming and with other creative art, where the process is such a big part of why people love these things. Well, for example, in games, they love watching the voice actor who does the voice lines, and they get connected to that voice actor. And they're like going, for example, if they stream, they're like, oh, they go on stream and do the voice, and they do the voice. And that's like that community. It's very supportive. So I think that kind of difference will maybe need to require how we integrate, not if we integrate or not, because there's something to be gained with AI and creativity, but it's going to have to be implemented at a different way and a different pace than on other industries. That's what I believe, because it's such a different view, because a scientist will not look at that vaccine the same way a dev or a player looks at their game. It's a bit different.
You make an interesting case for voice actors, and I've been thinking about this a lot. This is an interesting thing, because obviously it's going to be very easy to replace voice actors.
Yeah.
And there's no direct, I haven't been able to think of a direct benefit to voice actors of AI, because at least not within a capitalist world where they need to make money, and this is how they make their money. Because if they just get straight out replaced, and of course there are going to be those people that initially will suffer and things will change. And to some extent that reminds me of the Luddite revolt in, I think it was the second industrial revolution, or was it the first, when the weaving machines were or actually weavers were replaced by machines, and they then revolted and they tried to burn down the weaving machines in the UK. I'm not saying that nobody at any point in the coming transition to AI and robotics will have to go through something that will not be pleasant, right? There will be people that will not benefit. But then again, we can't we also cannot be 100%. That's the price of progress. But then again, we also cannot be 100% certain that's the way it's going to be. Because let's say that you start your own development studio, Ricardo, and you do the work in your own of 10 people. That means that your cost is going down incredibly far, right? Let's say then that you go on social media, you make a crowd-funded project out of it because you're really enjoying it and you get a fan base and everybody loves it, and you add a stretch goal, and then somebody says on Instagram, I want Mark Hamill to do the voice of the bad guy because he's just so awesome, right? And then you might say, look, I'm going to set a crowdfunding stretch goal. If we get together 100K, I'm going to pay Mark Hamill 90K and only use 10K for my production because that's all I need. And I can pay for Mark Hamill to do the voice and we will all love this. Right? I'm not saying that it's going to be like that, but the thing is that people need to keep in mind that just because the systems as they have worked up until this point are going to disappear and change does not necessarily mean that it only has to be bad. Just because we can replace human voice actors with AI and it's a lot cheaper won't necessarily mean, and this actually ties into what you said before, doesn't necessarily mean that we're going to do that. Because if we get the same kind of benefits and gains by being able to reduce costs on the other side of that massively, then we might still be able to spend on this, right? So it really comes down, there's so many things tying into that it's not just something that we should assume it's only going to be bad for voice actors in every form or shape, because I think that's just a matter of imaginary poverty.
It's that perceived value. Some people will definitely care more about that than others. People will I like to compare it to like the egg section in the supermarket. You have the regular eggs and you have the biological eggs. They're both eggs. They're both used for the same thing. The only thing that changes is how they got there. And it's going to be the same thing. People just you will have probably the regular father who just got back from work and just wants to play a game and doesn't care, because not everyone is staying in the loop, for example, as me or you, or like follows like developers closely and like the artists and the voice actors. Some people just, the game is fun, I'll play it, I don't care. But there will be other people who are going to be like, I actually care about that stuff. It doesn't sit right with me that you're taking a job opportunity from this person, especially with that thing that people say that AI just scrapes off other people's works and just meshes them together, all of that stuff. So that doesn't sit right with many people. And I can understand that, but also I can also see that people are being kind of alarmist because to quote Jurassic Park, just because if we think too much whether we could and not whether we should, pretty much. So just because it can be done doesn't mean it will be done.
No, I agree. Yeah. I agree with that. Although I also believe that a lot of this kind of alarmist behavior is a result of a lack of understanding. Because, for example, the idea that AI is just scraping other people's data and then basically copying other people's voices is just simply not correct. These transformer models, right, they are showing true creativity. And I have been saying this for over 2 years now, I think. But what we are seeing in these models is literally the same process as in humans called inspiration. It is inspiration.
Everything's a remix.
And everything is a remix to some extent, yes. And everything is an iteration on things that came before, right? This is why human level abstract thinking is now at a level that it's never been before. But we couldn't get here it was not like when the human was conceived, we couldn't jump to this level of abstract thinking right away. That has been a development process, right? And the same keeps going on. As long as we think that it's okay for a child to learn and be inspired, I think it should be okay for an AI to learn and be inspired. And I just think that the only real difference is the speed at which this iterative inspiration is now happening, and that's scaring people, and that will take some time to getting used to.
Yeah, but they don't see that the process is still up to them at the end of the day. If you want to use it, sure, you can use it. For example, if you have artist's block or something like that, you don't know what to draw, you can ask Perplexity or ChatGPT, hey, give me a prompt just to get it going. And then you take it from there. You take it from there, and it's still you. Right? Because people are just afraid of, things are not being creative, or it's going to rob these arts of the human spirit, which, of course, you can see whether a work is made, has passion, and it's made, or if it's just made for the sake of doing it. And, of course, the human touch is still necessary for these kinds of things. It's one of the industries where the human touch is very important. But it doesn't, at the end of the day, it doesn't mean that you can't have a little help from time to time. Like what I said, that correcting strokes, or you could have an AI proof your text for you. You could be like, oh, you still write the text, but you can still take that external help to be sure that it's still 100% good to go.
Oh man, we need to wrap this up because we're over an hour now. But you're touching on another incredible point that I think, and it instantly reminds me of the Spotify thing, right? Right now, there's still this ongoing discussion where artists say Spotify is robbing us of revenue, it's abusing artists. I think that, again, is a non-existing problem. In fact, it is an unfair accusation, and it completely misinterprets what Spotify has done. If anything, and I know that this is going to be a very controversial point, but if anything, this is a great example of how technology and its application have led to an incredible explosion of opportunity for artists. However, people choose to see it as a negative thing because they cannot see past their own prejudice. Because if you look at Spotify as an example, and AI is going to be exactly the same, just like you said, there has never been a time and age in which an artist had such an easy possibility to reach thousands, if not millions of people. You could argue, yes, artists in the 90s made much more money from their records. And even before that, in the 70s or even in the 50s of the last century, they made much more money per single sale of a record than they do now. And that is absolutely true. But if you try to hold on to that as being the only accepted way of making revenue, you're missing the point entirely. Because an artist in the 50s of the last century would be almost impossible for them to reach 1 million people unless they would find a big record label that would then produce them worldwide. Now you can be at home. You can be poor as hell. If you just have a guitar and you have a smartphone, you can reach millions of people. Through Spotify, through Instagram. And if you then say, I'm not making enough money of that, then you're just simply being a bad business person. Because you could be making money. You can set up a Patreon. You can sell merchandise. You can literally airdrop merchandise so you can sell it from Amazon that is made with your label and everything on it for your fans. You have no production costs and people can simply buy it from your website. And there is a million things like that that you can do to make money. And in fact, if you look at the greatest artists around the world, whether it be Taylor Swift or Martin Garrix, 90% of their revenue does not come from their records being sold or their songs being played on Spotify or even their concerts. It comes from everything around that. The sponsorship deals, the merchandise sales, all of that. So there's never been a time in history, in my opinion, where as an artist, you had a better opportunity to make money from making music or whatever art you do. But it's just that people want to have a bad guy. They want to be angry at somebody. They want to be jealous and they want to see it as a problem, even though the technology has ultimately only provided them with better opportunities. And the same is happening with AI right now. Okay, that was my final rant. We're going to have to wrap it up because it's 10 minutes past 12.
Let's wrap it up.
Okay, so I just want to say, Ricardo, absolute pleasure doing this with you, man.
Likewise.
Really loved your input. So yeah, everybody, I hope you enjoyed this week's newsletter. It's a little different without Patrick here. It's midsummer. I don't know how many of you will actually be around to read or watch this. If you are, please don't forget to give us a thumbs up. Don't forget to comment on our YouTube because every and all interactions and engagements are really helping us out. We want to reach more people. We want more people to be able to enjoy our newsletter and to share with us our thoughts on the topics that we discuss every week. Anything I forgot to say, Ricardo?
No, I think that's it.
No?
I think we can wrap it up.
We're going to do our wrap-up tune. I still need to make a better wrap-up tune, but yeah. Where is it? Oh! And I still fail at this. That needs to be goodbye. It's been a pleasure.
Yeah.
Ricardo,